Hi, I'm Rossi, and welcome to episode 1 of Every Guitar Tells a Story. Today we're at the Custom Cafe in Bexhill. I'm going to tell you about the actual second guitar I ever owned, the one I took to the audition to the John Barry 7. The beginning of my career was really after a couple of day jobs. I was playing in local bands, and I had a Burns Vibrasonic, which was smaller than this. Really nice guitar, very ahead of its time make. But then I got the job, as I'll give you the details later, but the job in the John Barry 7. And I thought, well, I should really upgrade the guitar. So I went to the Burns shop. At the time there was a Burns shop in Cambridge Circus in the centre of town. And I was looking at this in the window, the Burns split sound, and I thought, this is going to be the one for me. And luckily for me, Jim Burns actually came out of his shop and said, I see you're looking at the new Burns split sound. I can't do a Scottish accent, but anyway. And he said, why don't you come in and try it? And I thought, this is a sales pitch. But anyway, I went in and I tried it. It was very good. And he said, well, why don't you come down to the factory and have a look, see how we make them? So I did. So this is a guitar. I mean, what I think guitar players were all enamoured by was the on the bottom here. You can see it's a split sound. Wow. So split sound was an ingenious idea of keeping the top strings with the treble pickup. Like this thing, on just and the bottom strings with the bass pickup, which was just what it said on here was called jazz. But the split sound was good because you can play. So you could do things like that. Has a great jazz sound, right? I mean, traditionally. And the treble, which of course I used mainly in John Barry 7, was great for playing you know what. What else can I tell you about this? Well, I'm afraid it's seen better days. Tremolo arm doesn't work, unfortunately. But the pickups do. It's a little bit grumpy with the old switching, but not so bad. It's got a nice treble control and pretty good volume control considering for the time it was made. And one of the great things about this guitar is that I've never had to alter the truss rod. The neck's always been really straight, which I actually really like. So I saw this advert in the Melody Maker. Now, for those of you probably don't remember the Melody Maker, it was a sort of weekly mag for the music industry, and it was mainly more for musicians than it was really for the business, and people could advertise in it and all sorts. But I saw in there that the John Barry 7 required a guitar player. This is because Vic Flick, the original guitar player, was leaving to go to America. And I thought, oh, well, I definitely should try for that. And the bizarre thing is that there was actually a phone number in the newspaper. And this happened to be the tenor player, Bob Downs. He had, apparently he was the one with the telephone. And so I phoned him up, and he was slightly abrupt, and he said, yeah, and I said, well, look, I'd love to have an musician to play, the James Bond, the John Barry 7, James Bond. I mean, John Barry at the time was doing lots of TV things like Hit and Miss and Jukebox Jury. They were all John's stuff. And he agreed, and we met at a cinema in North London, the foyer, because the cinema wasn't open. And they put a load of music in front of me, first being the James Bond theme, and I didn't like to tell them I couldn't read, but what I did do, and I will always be thankful for my parents. My mum and dad actually bought me a record player, a Dansette record player, and I didn't even think that it might not be the right speed, but it was, luckily. And I got an album of all the famous sort of John Barry tracks, and I learnt them all. I just woodshedded for 2 weeks, which is my big, if anyone ever asks me about what should I do to join a band, just woodshed all their tracks. Don't worry about anything else, just get them perfect so you remember them. So, James Bond theme, 4 pages of guitar music. Couldn't read, I could only read the title. I just played it. And that one track was sort of good enough for them to say, oh well, this guy's good. So they phoned John Barry up and said, I remember Bob saying on the phone, this guy's good, he knows the tunes. And John said, well, obviously he said, we'll book him. And I went back to my place. I was living with my folks at the time, and suddenly there was these guys outside my front door. I knocked on the door. My mum came to the door. I said, is it all right if I go on tour on Monday? And she looks at me and she looks at the guys and thought, well, they look like responsible. She said, yes, that's okay if you want to. I think they were having kittens over it. And so that was it. I started touring the very next week with John Barry, and that lasted for 2 years. So when I joined the John Barry 7, we were all wearing these ridiculous red lame suits, which is kind of a joke now, but you will, if you dare to look it up, you will see there are pictures of me in a red lame suit. Thing was, it was decided by the powers that be in the band that mainly the front line, the trumpet, tenor and baritone, that really it didn't stand out with a red suit. So really the red guitar I should have either a different guitar, which I was totally against, or it should be a different colour. So I sort of regret this in a way, but now we're calling it creme brulee. It used to be red, and then I took it to a guy called John Birch, who was in Birmingham. He used to do all Slade's guitars. He started, that's his claim to fame. And I said to him, can you respray my guitar? And he said, yeah, no problem. I won't do a Birmingham accent either. But basically, I took it up after spending hours without the wonders of sat-nav, as we have now, finding his house. And he took it from me, and a week later, it was white. You can probably just about see the white. But unfortunately, the red bled through. You can see the red there, maybe. Yeah, and so it became yellow, which is what happened. But at the time, it was white, and we were all very happy because it stood out with the suits. I mean, this guitar was with me for quite some time, through John Barry, and things like Strats, Fender. There was a before I started with the John Barry 7, there was an embargo on American goods, so really you didn't really see Strats in the shops. You saw British guitars, then some Gibsons, and then Strats. So that wasn't really an option, at the time. But so with the John Barry 7, I after I left, I still had this guitar, and I started with CBS. CBS offered me a recording contract. Well, that's something you don't hear about these days much. And David Howe's the A&R man now wanted me to make a jazz album, which was came out as Turn Circle, which was great. I mean, that was very, I say it's not traditional, but he used more of this sound. If you remember that sort of footprints. So we. I actually picked this up. I hadn't played it for a little while. And I picked it up for the first time the other day, and I thought, well, actually these pickups are really good. You know, they do something they do a job that some other pickups don't do these days, and they're not overwound or they're really sort of, you know, heavyweight pickups. They just, you know, reflect the sound of the guitar. You know, good or bad, whether you like it or not, they're actually, I think they're a really good one-off design. At the beginning of this episode, I played a chord, or it's really one shape. Well, that one shape, which is a lovely chord, is actually what I get asked about more than anything. The question is, what is the last chord of the James Bond thing? Well, it's this, and that's known, classically known as an E minor major 7. But for guitar players, it can be thought of as many ways. But basically, if it's a B and you leave the top string open and you make that a G with your little finger, you get this. So E minor major 7. A great chord. I did about eight Bond movies, and John was very dry Yorkshireman. It's great actually, and he just said, "Look, we need some fills over this sequence." So in the afternoon, I started to look at this sequence, and I said, "Well, what would you like me to do?" And he said, "Well, just play anything, just improvise." So I did, and it was a skiing sequence where James opens a parachute at the end, and his life is saved by this parachute, and I think all the bad guys think he's dead. So he said, "Yeah, just play anything." So I kind of did. And this last fella, which is a complete bluff, saw him over the cliff. That's the kind of thing that he wanted. And I did actually have a bottleneck, which I haven't got on me today, but basically I played another couple of things like that. He just wanted more effects than anything, and the guitar kind of was the thing to do it, because it was the, you know, one of the most forward instruments around, the electric guitar, and there wasn't a synth on board, so and it wasn't in the actual music any of the string section or anything like that. So I sort of made up the kind of falling over the cliff music. Yeah, so I had this guitar through John Barry, and then left John Barry, and we had a strange sort of in-between episode of a band called the Night Owls, and we actually made a single with the late Joe Meek, which was quite an eye-opener, which was above a kind of leather goods wear in Holloway Road in North London, which is luckily near where I live, and that wasn't buying a hit, but the Shay Joe and the Night Owls were never to be. Anyway, I was called one day by an A&R guy in CBS, and who was the most fantastic guy called David Howells, and he probably said the one sentence that you rarely hear or never hear is, "We're actually starting a jazz label called Realm Jazz. Would you like to make an album?" So here's an A&R guy like in CBS asking me to make a jazz album. Wow. So I did, and this led to a lot of things. I mean, this was my first single turn circle, and we played a couple of things that like Footprints, a couple of one tunes, Footprints, and I think a John Lloyd tune called Sombrero Sam, and the rest was my compositions. Anyway, you know, it did quite well, and he liked that. And then we were talking one day, and there was a band called Blood, Sweat and Tears that were making it really big in America, and he had again been asked about, is there an English version of this? And so he asked me about it, and I got together a band called Rock Workshop, and we did 2 albums for CBS, one called Rock Workshop and the other one called The Very Last Time, which wasn't meant to be the very last time of the album, but it was just called that. And we had a kind of reasonable success with the first album. One of the things, I mean, you got to remember that about this, that we recorded this all live. I mean, it had a 7-piece brass section and 2 drummers and percussion. So it was quite a big band, and we recorded everything live, and vocals, which of course was the late Alex Harvey was in that band, and we wrote several songs together on that album. That's the first one, called Rock Workshop. If you look it up, you can hear him singing, which is great, you know. So my guitar sound hence changed a little bit, and there was a little bit of gain in the sound, although it was a bit early for, you know, big gain or any kind of metal version, but it sounded roughly. I still had this guitar, by the way, so this is what one of the tracks sounded like. And that was called Used to Lose. That was the track, the single that actually kind of made it to the lower charts. So this was with me for Turn Circle, and the second jazz album called Dragon Hill, which was a little more way out, and that was kind of early kind of soundscapes, really, with, you know, piano strings and me playing some freaky things on guitar. So it was quite avant-garde. And we did the second, at the same time, did the second Rock Workshop album, which was The Very Last Time. That's funny, because the jazz albums got more freaky, and the second Rock Workshop album was just slightly more middle of the road. We just pulled it back a little bit. And this is where my guitar, my Burns Vibrasonic, this is where the guitar story ends for this guitar. I have nearly all the guitars I've ever played, bar from 2 that were stolen from me in Germany quite a long while ago in Frankfurt. If I find him or her, there'll be trouble. But then I bought a Fender Stratocaster, and that's episode 2.